I haven't enjoyed a race as much as the race this weekend in I can't even remember how long.
They basically said that, well, Lando's not winning, which is why he's moaning, and he'd probably say the same about Max's complaints as well.
I was so happy, by the way, when Charles Leclerc, he kind of related it to being like getting a mushroom on Mario Kart, and I was like, yes, I was right with it being like a game. Oh God!
How he did it and how he didn't either make contact with the wall or with Lawson's car, I'll never know.
It sounds so simplistic, but when you say they turned up with 4 battery packs and 2 of them didn't work, this sounds like when you've forgotten to take your charger on a stag do to Benidorm. You know what I mean? Hello and welcome to Pit Lane Talk, your new online home for everything F1. The new Formula One season is underway, and we have our first winner. George Russell with his Mercedes has set the pace that the others must follow, but it was certainly an interesting race, and we're going to unpick that now with our panel of experts here. I like to big them up like that just to make them feel good about themselves. We'll start with Reach journalist Abby Nicholson. How are you, Abby?
I'm good, thank you. I'm so excited for this episode because there's just so much to unpick.
There's a lot to talk about, a lot to fit in. I'm going to have to set off a hooter if I think we're going on too long about one particular matter or not, but we'll see what we can jam into it. We're also joined, of course, by the Daily Express and Daily Mirror's F1 correspondent, Dan Moxon. Dan, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good. Well, the talking's over. The first race has taken place. We spoke a little bit in our opening episode last week about the possibility of a bit of dominance from Mercedes. It's sort of worked out that way in the end, but a lot has happened in between there to get to that point. A lot of concern beforehand about how these new cars were going to operate with the change in engines, with the sort of hybrid setup. Plenty of complaints about it, but also it turned out to be a bit of an exciting race.
It did, and I mean, everything was very doom and gloom after qualifying. You looked at the times, and George Russell's on pole, Kimi Antonelli's second, and the nearest car to them is nearly 0.8 of a second down the road. Those aren't the gaps that, F1 chiefs are going to be looking at that and going, oh, this is bad, this is bad. Have we got, one really dominant team again? And yes, they went on and they won the race, and they got a 1-2. I would hope that everyone that's watching this probably knows that by now. If not, the picture's going to kind of spoil it for you. But it wasn't as... Mercedes weren't as dominant as I think a lot of people feared. There was a good race. We had lots of overtaking. We had plenty of excitement, particularly in the opening stages. And the racing made up for what was a pretty dour Saturday. And I think we'll have settled a few nerves about what people might have expected in this new era of Formula One.
Do you know what? I haven't enjoyed a race as much as the race this weekend in I can't even remember how long. Them first 10 laps were just so exciting, with George Russell and Charles Leclerc playing cat and mouse with each other. It was just so exciting to watch. And to be honest, it put a lot of my nerves at ease. We do obviously still have a few people talking about how they don't like these new era of cars, but they're not winning, as George Russell said.
We'll dig a little deeper into that in due course. Abby, bit of a chaotic start. Lights out very quickly. The anticipation of the start of a Grand Prix is normally the best bit for a lot of people, what I mean? Certainly for passive followers of the sport as well. The drama and the excitement at the start with everyone on the grid. And some people got off well and others didn't.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I don't think I anticipated that everyone would be starting on different battery levels. I just presumed that they would all be on the same. So to hear obviously after the race and just see how the start was, with obviously the Ferraris flying away, Kimi Antonelli didn't get the best start and neither did George Russell. But they were all actually starting on different battery levels. So after the race, George and Kimi both said that they started on 0, whereas Charles Leclerc didn't give away how much he had, but he did say that he had a little bit more than them. So it was super exciting off the line, but there was a little bit of an issue further back, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, with an almost near miss between Liam Lawson and Colapinto.
Yeah, indeed. Dan, why can people start at different levels then? If everyone's going around the track, wants to warm up or whatever, and they're running, relatively similar engines or ones that have to meet to a specific specification, how can the Ferraris have more power than, say, the Mercedes? What are they doing differently?
Well, that's a question I think that Mercedes would love to know the answer to. That's certainly going to be something they're going to be working on, because, I mean, there's no denying those Mercedes engines are brilliant. and they're super fast for a whole race, you know, an hour and a half race long, and Mercedes had the fastest engines for 1 hour, 29 minutes and 50 seconds of it, but that first 10 seconds, we saw it in pre-season testing, Ferrari are just so quick to get away, they're so quick off the line, and a lot of their rivals are going to be looking at that and trying to figure out how on earth can they do that, because it's given them a massive advantage, because you've got Lewis Hamilton qualifying 7th, he's 3rd by, you know, a couple of corners into the race. Charles Leclerc qualifies 4th. He's leading the race by the first corner. That's a massive weapon for Ferrari, and I think that's one that Mercedes are certainly going to want to get on top of.
Yeah, and Ferrari will be looking at this now, thinking, you know, because there was a bit of moaning that perhaps Mercedes might be too far ahead of the other teams. That was certainly the impression we were getting from testing and from qualifying. But if Ferrari in a position where they can get themselves at the front of a manic grid at pretty much every race, then it's a huge advantage, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Just getting that clean air right at the front, being able to get into that first corner with the only issue being your teammate, which some cases it can go a little bit wrong. Obviously, they're very competitive people. It is why they are where they are. That was a weird sentence. But yeah, just getting that head start, it's what you want.
On the flip side, if you have a good start and the guy in front of you doesn't, that can cause a few problems, as we saw with Colapinto and Lawson a little bit further back in the grid.
Can we just say Colapinto, I have no idea how he got out the way.
Oh, his car control was incredible to not crash into the back of it, because the onboard cameras were particularly scary when it showed the replays. Basically, Lawson just got an awful start. He just bogged down on the line. He said afterwards that he just had a complete loss of power, and he just didn't get any power for about 5 seconds. But obviously, all the cars behind him are getting away. And the car that was directly behind him obviously sees that he's moving slow, can move out of the way fine, but then Colapinto's behind that car. He's unsighted by the car that's between them. And the onboard view is very dramatic. You can see that car move out of the way, and all of a sudden he's hurtling towards this Racing Bulls, which is barely moving. And there's a gap that between Lawson's car and the wall that is about the width of an F1 car plus about 2 feet. And somehow, at short notice, and while accelerating, he manages to swerve to the right, get and thread that sort of needle almost. How he did it and how he didn't either make contact with the wall or with Lawson's car, I'll never know. But it was a cracking way to get away for Colapinto. It was just a shame that he'd been pushed back in his grid box and ended up getting a drive-through penalty early on. Which,
or a Colapinto and go penalty,
yeah,
as it put on
according
the screen.
to the graphics. Yeah, the graphics department got that one wrong on the live broadcast. But yeah, that was almost a shame, considering that was a pretty heroic bit of driving from him.
Well, there was plenty of overtaking at the front. There was plenty of overtaking all around, but specifically at the front with a bit of to and fro between the league leaders, the race leaders rather, not the league leaders. That is the level of excitement that I guess F1 wants to see, and its fans, on a race by race basis, not just the odd one. But it couldn't have got off to a more perfect start.
Yeah, well, among all the complaints in pre-season about what the racing might look like, I was on a video call with Stefano Domenicali, the chief executive for Formula One, and a few other journalists, and he was saying, don't worry, calm down. He was firefighting a little bit almost, and saying, don't worry, when we get racing, it's going to be good. It's going to be really entertaining, we promise. And again, after qualifying, we were all a little bit sceptical of that, but then the race gets underway, and those first 10, 12 laps were absolutely brilliant. And you could just tell that, Domenicali would have been sat there in his box watching that, just going, thank you. Thank you so much. I've not been made to look a liar. Like any other race, it died down a little bit, and there's always a bit of a lull in the middle of a race, and then sometimes things go back towards the end. But it was good fun. There was almost triple the number of overtakes compared to last year's Australian Grand Prix. This circuit isn't one that's known for being great for overtaking, so went from 45 overtakes in 2025 to 120 overtakes this time around.
I know.
And that's not the only thing that makes an F1 race exciting, but it certainly helps. The lead changing hands several times as it did in the opening stages. Yeah, it was particularly the first sort of quarter of the race. You couldn't take your eyes off it.
What about some of the limitations then that we've seen with these new engines? So one of the things that was notable was when a car was coming to the end of a long straight, it doesn't seem to have the, either the same power, and needs to slow significantly to be able to get around the corner without coming off the track. And is that going to change the dynamic of how races look, or is it just another thing that they need to learn to manage?
It was certainly noticeable from the fan perspective, particularly in qualifying, especially, you've got the onboard shots as well, and you can hear the engine, I won't do the noise because it won't be a particularly fun audio experience.
I really want you to do that.
Go on.
But you can hear the engine sort of running at the top of its capacity, and then you can hear it almost going like, and winding down a little bit. I didn't want to do it too loud, but you can almost hear it winding down, and they're still on a straight, they still should be going flat out, and they are. The driver's got their foot down as far as they can, but the engine's run out of battery, so it's thick. So that's quite jarring to hear more than to see, really.
I'm begging our producers to please turn that off.
Yeah.
Turn that noise up.
Yeah, that's getting clipped up, that one, isn't it?
You've got your own little catchphrase noise now, Dan, I'm sure.
That's it. It's stuck.
But yeah, so that's a little jarring. These are things that we'll probably get used to. A lot of people won't like them, and that's understandable, but it's I guess human nature to resist change. None of us like when we know how things work. We don't like it when something comes in and upsets the balance, do we? Well,
one thing we do like is overtaking and action and excitement. No DRS, of course, this year. This is changed now. For better or for worse, we will find out over the course of the season. But so far so good in the first race with all those changes, particularly in the early stages of the race. There is some people that might argue that some of this sort of turbo boost, as they call it, or whatever, is a little bit artificial. Does that matter? Or are we? Goes on underneath the bonnet? Is that really our concern, or is it just the excitement that's happening on the track?
There's definitely arguments for both sides, isn't there? I think I was so happy, by the way, when Charles Leclerc, he kind of related it to being like getting a mushroom on Mario Kart, and I was like, yes, I was right
I'm
with
glad
it
you
being like a
that
game.
Oh
God! But he did say that it just had so much power, and you could see that when they were racing. I mean, like I was saying at the start of the race, George Russell and Charles Leclerc were playing cat and mouse, and then Lewis just came out of nowhere, literally onto the screen. I was like, whoa, how did this turn into like a three-way fight for first place? As a fan, I think it is really exciting to see, but I do understand people's, I guess they don't really like that side of it. They just want to see pure racing, which we all do. But F1 is changing, and I don't think excitement is a bad thing.
No, and there's things like, for example, George Russell's pole time was around about 3.5 seconds slower than the pole time that Lando Norris put in last year's Australian Grand Prix. And you look at that and go, well, these cars are slower, and yes, they are, but there's mitigating factors. I mean, for starters, those cars last year, they'd been in use in Formula 1 for 3 years, or essentially the same rule set had. They were very developed cars. Teams had had 3 years to make them quicker, whereas these are a brand new rule set, and it was the very first race. But then also, does that really matter from a fan perspective? Because we've got the timings on the screen. We can obviously very quickly see, if you look back, as soon as all you have to do is Google what last year's lap time was. Other search engines are available. And you can immediately compare them and go, well, that's quite a lot slower. But to be honest, unless the lap time was on the screen, you wouldn't know. As the average fan watching, you wouldn't know that those cars are slower. Looking at them, they look more nimble in the corners. If anything, to the eye, in the corners in particular, a lot of them look faster to me.
I'd say that,
But around the lap, they're a bit slower, and obviously people are whinging about that. But in general, I from a fan perspective, I don't think that is going to damage the experience at all.
Do you agree with that, Abby?
I think so, yeah. So I was even thinking to myself while I was watching, like, these cars, they do look faster. I knew they were slower because I saw Danny do a video talking about the difference in these pole times. But to me, they just they're a little bit smaller as well. And they just look really fast, really nippy. And I really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, I think for me personally as well, you're absolutely right if you were to presume that I hadn't checked last year's track times. So, to the average Joe watching F1, I don't think that, a reduction in lap times has particularly been noticeable. And I don't think a lot of people would be particularly bothered about that if it gives you a more competitive race and a better spectacle overall. So
no, it's more of a driver problem than a fan problem, really. Drivers just want to go as fast as they can, and if they're going slower than they have in previous years, they're always going to moan about that a little bit. But
they earn a lot of money, Dan, so that's their problem.
It's hard to feel sorry for the millionaires that get to drive fast cars for a living.
That's their problem to solve, isn't it? Exactly. Let's feel a little bit sorry for Isack Hadjar, who I guess in some way contributed to the competitiveness at the front of the grid dissipating a little bit.
Yeah, well, first of all, his first qualifying session in a Red Bull, That Red Bull car, no one's been able to get that to go fast in a qualifying session for a long, long time. And then he qualifies third when the pressure's on him because Max crashed out early on in qualifying. So all the pressure at Red Bull's on him. And he goes and puts it as the fastest car that's not a Mercedes on the
Impressive.
grid. What a start to life as a Red Bull driver for Isack Hadjar. Such a shame to see all that unravel on Sunday through no fault of his own. Just encountered a problem on lap 11, had to pull over at the side of the track. You could see the smoke coming out the back of it straight away. That car was done for the day. So a real shame for him. Pointless debut, but through no fault of his own. You would imagine that he would have been on for a pretty big points haul had the car not fallen apart.
Did lead to some exciting racing though, because
It
that then triggered a virtual safety car. And whenever a virtual safety car comes out, everyone is just itching to get into the pits. They're just like,
tyres,
pits,
new
please.
tyres.
Just because it takes a fair few seconds off of how long they'd normally be in there for. So it did lead to a really exciting turn of events, and in my opinion, I can't understand why Ferrari didn't go in.
Yeah, I was going to say this is kind of where the race turned a little bit, I think, isn't it? Because Ferrari's strategy was not that.
As per. It's so frustrating, I think, watching Ferrari, and obviously while they were out racing, Lewis was asking questions as to why didn't at least one of us go in. There's sometimes they'll double stack, and sometimes it'll be one goes in and then the other one will be on a different strategy, but neither of them pitted in that first virtual safety car, and Lewis was asking questions about it. But after the race, it was really interesting. When he was being interviewed and he was asked if there was any ifs or buts left in his mind, and he said no. He was really happy to just be there and just be able to fight at the top again. It was almost like there was a sparkle in his eye, which I haven't seen in Lewis's eye for a fair while. And it was nice to see him up there. But I always question Ferrari's strategy. Like, it seems like they're asking more questions than just going, right, this is exactly what we're going to do. They're going, should we do this? Should we not? And then it's too late.
As you say, Lewis Hamilton, a little bit of a glint in his eye, very close to a podium finish.
Yeah.
That's going to give him confidence for the rest of the season.
0.6 seconds?
0.625 seconds from a first ever Ferrari podium in his 25th Grand Prix. He's been waiting a long time, and he still is waiting. But he was saying afterwards, a couple more laps he'd have got Leclerc. He was feeling himself. He was feeling confident in this car, which we didn't really see at all last season in a Ferrari. So it's really nice to see him back.
It wasn't brilliant for everyone this weekend.
No.
Piastri and Hulkenberg not starting.
Yeah. The locals had a bit of a shock about 40 minutes before the start of the race when they look up and they see Oscar Piastri's McLaren in the wall on the reconnaissance lap of all things.
I mean, how does that happen?
It's one of those. I mean, they are, like we say, they're still learning a lot about these new cars, these new engines. And from the onboard, he's going around the corner. He seems to go a little bit wider than he probably would have liked, catches a bit of curb, and maybe he gets a little bit of a power boost out of nowhere or something like that. But the back end just turns around. That's it. He's in the wall, and his day's done. It's over in an instant. And he's a Melbourne lad. He was racing in his home city. It's the second year in a row that things have not gone well for him at all on home soil. We've been racing in Melbourne for 30 years. We've still not seen an Australian driver on the podium at their home race. And it's almost feeling like a curse at this point.
Another curse. We'll have to make a list.
There's plenty of them.
Good job that race is early in the season. Just get that out of the way.
Well, that's it. It's one just to put behind him and say, you know what, it's just a terrible start to the season, but, you know, is maybe looking at the other car and things didn't go great for Lando. The performance wasn't there, so maybe not a massive amount of potential points lost for Oscar, maybe about 10 points, maybe at the most. So he'll be looking at it. He's just got to cast that out of his mind and just focus on China.
And in our preview show last week, we were talking about the plight of Aston Martin, which came to pass, really, didn't it? I mean, what can you say?
I mean, we knew that they weren't going to be competitive, and to be honest, they used the race more as a practice. They both didn't complete the full amount of laps, and Alonso retired his car in the end. Stroll did make it to the end. I can't quite remember how many laps behind he was.
He completed 43 laps, so he was 15 laps down on the field. So he wasn't classified, but to be honest, he did more laps than I think any of us were expecting because Adrian Newey came out on Friday in the team principal's press conference, and he's saying, you know, we've only had one practice session by this point, and he's saying, well, we brought 4 battery packs with us to Melbourne, and 2 of them aren't working. We're literally down to the 2 that are on the car. And that's after the first hour of running. So we're looking at that and going like, are they even going to make it to the start line for the race? and they both did, so that's good. One of them didn't qualify, Lance Stroll didn't qualify, but they both made it to the start line. Stroll did, like I say, 43 laps. Fernando did, I think it was 21 or 22 laps. So they've gathered a decent bit of data. Fernando was saying after, obviously they're disappointed, but he's saying, look, we've been able to practice a start. We've been able to practice these procedures going out, that we've been able to practice managing the battery a little bit more, these sort of things. So we knew they probably weren't going to get to the end of the race, even if they did start, and they didn't. They don't think they'll do it again in China in a week's time. But if we are trying to look on the bright side, they're getting out on track a bit more than we thought. They're gathering the data that they're going to need to use in order to turn this situation around. And hopefully it is quick for them, because we don't want to see cars not starting or not finishing races through lack of spare parts or anything like that. So hopefully they get those things sorted soon.
Well, when it sounds so simplistic, but when you say they turned up with 4 battery packs and 2 of them didn't work, this sounds like when you've forgotten to take your charger on a stag do. Benidorm, you know what I mean? Can we borrow your battery pack to get our car off the grid?
Well, Honda just had so many problems in pre-season. They're then having to focus their resources on fixing things, and that means that they're not focusing on manufacturing the spares that they're going to. Williams had this issue a couple of years ago with they didn't have a spare chassis, and so when Logan Sargent was racing for them at the time, when he crashed, had a big crash, he wasn't able to race. Or Albon had a big crash, sorry, and they ended up giving Sargent's car to him, which was a bit of a whole thing at the time. But they could only put one car in the race because they didn't have a third chassis, and that was just because they were so focused on fixing other issues that they didn't have time to make spares, and it seems like it's a bit of a similar story at Honda at the moment.
Well, one of the most satisfying things for me personally from watching yesterday's race was when I looked at the final standings and all 5 Brits were in the top 8.
Yeah. So good.
A little bit of dominance there, and obviously a winner in George Russell, but also a debut for Lindblad.
Mm-hmm.
What a start! What a start for Alan Lindblad.
That's not creeping in the back door, is it? And just feeling your way in. He made quite an impression.
Yeah, the 70th driver in F1 history to score points on debut, and he did it in style. It reached Q3, qualified in the top 10. The Racing Bulls car looked quick. It looked pretty racy. Obviously, Liam Lawson didn't get points. That was we've talked about his start already. That set him back quite badly, but then all of a sudden Lindblad's your only sort of hope for points, and dealt with the pressure brilliantly. Really mature driver. I mean, he was up to P3 on the first lap. He had a brilliant start. He was one of the non-Ferrari cars that ended up having a really good start anyway. And you're looking at him, and in the first couple of laps of his first ever F1 race, he's going wheel to wheel with 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. And he was saying afterwards there was a bit of a pinch me moment. Obviously, I mean, he was born in 2007. Which I think we talked about last week. It's a pain, isn't it, when you hear that number? But
yes. But reminded me.
But he was born in August that year. Lewis Hamilton made his F1 debut that season. He was literally a fetus when Lewis Hamilton first started racing in F1. And then all of a sudden he's going up against him, and he didn't have the car speed to keep him behind or keep Lando behind eventually. But to have that start, to look racy, to look aggressive, to look confident. And he was very confident in what he was saying after the race.
Very confident.
I'm here to win. Well, not here to win, but I'm here. I'm fearless. Things like this. He's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I quite like that.
There were Brits ahead of him, of course. Oliver Behrman, for one. Points on the board for Haas. Impressive to see. His teammate, Esteban Ocon, not as happy. Had a little bit of a whinge about something, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. First of all, Behrman. I mean,
incredible.
Brilliant start to his second full season in F1. We've seen quite a bit of him now, but Haas. I think someone commented under our video last week, asking a little bit more about Haas and how we're feeling about them, and I replied and I said Haas are my pick to be the best team in the midfield.
Yes.
And Ollie Behrman finished the race as
best of the rest.
Best of the rest, the driver, the highest finishing driver that wasn't driving for one of the big 4 teams. So I'm a little bit smug that I predicted that quite well.
Well, you are our expert analyst for a reason, Dan. So.
Oh, it's okay. I'm going to get absolutely everything else wrong. So, but no, it was a great start from him. Brilliant drive, and then as you mentioned, Esteban Ocon 11th in the other car. He was outperformed by Behrman last year, which he's an experienced racer, and Behrman was in a rookie season, so that was always going to sting him a little bit. And then it's sort of started as it went last year as well. And or after the race, he was saying that he doesn't think he's got the same car as Ollie, which maybe a little bit of needle coming in there, and a little bit of internal politics.
We've heard that before from him, though, haven't we? It was very similar with that at Alpine when he was teammates with Pierre Gasly. So it's something that he's complained about before. And
Fernando Alonso was there as well.
Yeah.
He's got a bit of a track record.
He might have a cheaper battery pack.
But it's got to, I think it gets to a point where you're thinking, is it an issue or is it you?
Max Verstappen. Okay. He's had a good whinge about these cars prior to the season starting. He started low down on the grid due to problems and used his class to climb through the field pretty quickly, I might add. So maybe the car isn't so bad after all. And he was voted driver of the day, I guess, based on where he started the race and to where he finished it. We've got a bit of a sort of developing news this morning, haven't we, as well? That he's also taken on another race outside of Formula One. You want to tell us a little bit more about that first, Dan, maybe?
Yeah, so a terrible Saturday. He had crashed on it was no fault of his own. It was just the rear wheels locked up, and that was it. He was a passenger from there, but that crash meant he started low down, recovered to 6th, which is, like I say, why he got driver of the day. He wasn't particularly pleased afterwards, though, because he's saying it still wasn't fun, and he only overtook those cars because they were just objectively slower cars than the one he had, so he doesn't really see them. You know what he's
I
like?
did my job.
Well, this is it. He turned up, did the 9 to 5, and went home. Basically, is what he did just as much as he could on the Sunday.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned before, not long, probably about half an hour before we came on and recorded this, it was confirmed that he's going to be racing in the Nürburgring 24 Hours. We saw him do a little bit of GT racing last year. He's clearly wanting to explore other motorsport disciplines outside of Formula One. Obviously, you've got to look at the timing of it. He's really not happy with these cars. He's really not happy with this new era. He's said that maybe he's approaching towards the end of his Formula One career. Is he maybe starting to look at what a transition might look like into other racing series? It's certainly putting some feelers out there.
We've got quite far through this pod without really touching on Lando Norris, who is the defending champion,
Yes.
so we probably should mention him. I'm British. He finished 5th.
Yeah.
He's had a bit of a moan as
He's
well.
not happy, is he?
Well, that was kind of representative of his race a little bit. The fact that we've not mentioned him so far is just the car just wasn't quick enough to make any progress, and obviously he's not pleased with that. He says the McLaren car is quite far off the Mercedes and the Ferrari, and the time showed it was nearly 52 seconds down on George Russell by the time he took the checkered flag. But yeah, no, he's gone from, early in pre-season he was actually defending the cars a little bit, and then he came out later and said he was joking or didn't want to be too negative. And then now he's, on Saturday after qualifying, he said that they've gone from the best generation of Formula cars to the worst. Which,
is that because he won in the last one? Or?
Well, that's what George Russell said.
Yeah, I was just going to come to George Russell, because he did offer a bit of a retort to.
He was asked about Lando's comments after the race in the post-race press conference, and he basically said that, well, Lando's not winning, which is why he's moaning, and he'd probably say the same about Max's complaints as well, and that's probably true, because that's been the same in Formula One history. Whoever's winning is happy with the cars and with the regulations, and whoever's losing is looking for someone else to blame.
Well, okay. Well, that draws a line under Australia. No rest for the wicked, because it's straight off to China for this forthcoming weekend.
Yeah.
So better start charging those batteries pretty quickly. What can you tell us about the Chinese Grand Prix then, Dan? And how different is it going to be from Australia?
Well, it's the first sprint weekend of the new season, straight into one. Which
on that point, Dan, sorry to cut you off. Just for the benefit of a wider F1 audience, can you just give us a bit of an explanation on the difference of a sprint weekend as well?
Yeah, sure. So the format is different in that instead of the 3-hour-long practice sessions that you usually have across a Friday and the Saturday morning, there's just 1 hour of practice. Then you're straight into a qualifying session for the sprint race, which takes place on the Saturday. It's basically the same as a Grand Prix, except shorter, and you don't have to make any pit stops. Yeah. And then everything from there is the same as normal. You've got a qualifying and then your Grand Prix on the Sunday.
Do you think, in terms of where people are going to finish in this race, do you think it's going to follow a similar pattern to what we've just seen in Australia? Or does it mean that this is highly unpredictable environment that we're working in at the moment?
I think further down it might be a little more. I think it's going to be a while before we see Mercedes not be sort of the favourite going into any race weekend. just on the sheer pace, particularly in qualifying, the sheer pace that they were able to show off there. It's a different track. There is still one very big long straight in particular on this track, which Melbourne has one as well. So we'll probably see some of that, what they call super clipping, the slowing down towards the end of the long straight. So we'll see some similar elements, but it is a different track. Like we say, it's a different format for the race weekend. I think Mercedes will probably still be expecting to win it based on the performance advantage they have, and Ferrari will still probably be very strong. But yeah, maybe things will be a little bit more mixed up further down the order.
All right, then. I'm going to make you put your money where your mouth is.
Oh,
now.
not again.
I'll start with you, Abby, I think. Who's going to win in China?
I'm going to go for Kimi.
Okay.
I think he might have been taking some notes from last week. The team will have been taking notes too. He's very chaotic. I love a chaotic driver.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be really interesting, and I'm going to go for Kimi Antonelli.
Interesting. Okay, Dan.
I'd love to not be boring, but I think I've just got to say George Russell again. Purely, if I'm looking at Australia, Mercedes, like I said, we know that they've got the race pace to beat everyone at the moment. And Kimi, yes, he finished second and he got maximum points and he qualified second as well. But it was quite a messy weekend for Kimi. You know, crashing in FP3. He might not have been able to qualify if Max hadn't have crashed and caused the red flag that gave them the delay they needed to get him back, to get him into the session. So it was, and the race as well, he was making quite a few mistakes here and there, but he just had the car under him so that it didn't matter. So I think I've got to say Mercedes, and I think I've still got to say George Russell, just because I think Kimi is obviously a brilliant talent, but the consistency isn't there yet.
What about you?
Well, I think I am compelled, obligated rather, to be different.
Go for it.
So we can't have Mercedes clean sweep, can we? So, but I won't deviate too far away from the favourites, I think.
You're saying Franco Colapinto is going to come back and win?
I'm afraid not. I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. I'm bringing Ferrari into this. That does bring us to the end of our show today. Thank you very much for joining us, Abby and Dan. Always a pleasure. We will be back next Monday, straight after the Chinese Grand Prix, where we will be discussing what happened there, and we'll see whether our predictions were actually any good or not. Someone's got to be right.
Someone.
Hopefully it was me. You've been watching Pit Lane Talk. I'm your host, Richard Garnett, and we will see you soon. Have a good week.